I didn't leave my marriage quietly. I left it under camera flashes, with 2 suitcases, and the sound of my own heart cracking open. 12 years. That's how long I'd spent playing the role of Sophia Hartfield, society wife. The woman who smiled through charity galas, hosted dinners for people who whispered about her the moment she left the room, and slept beside a man who stopped touching her long before he stopped pretending. Richard asked for the divorce like he was ordering coffee cold, efficient, already bored. By the time I was standing on the marble steps of our house, it wasn't really mine anymore. My credit cards had been frozen weeks earlier. The joint accounts were under review. Everything I owned was stuffed into suitcases I bought on clearance, because that's what my life had become. Discounted. Disposable. The photographers were already there. Richard made sure of that. I saw him through the bay window on the 2nd floor, arm draped around a much younger woman's waist. Vanessa, 26, blonde, wearing the silk robe I used to wear when I still thought my marriage was salvageable. They watched me like spectators at a show. "How does it feel to lose everything, Sophia?" someone shouted. I kept walking. My heels clicked against the driveway like a countdown. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my suitcase. I didn't answer any questions because if I opened my mouth, I knew I'd scream, and I refused to give them that. The Uber smelled like cheap air freshener and awkward silence. The driver didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. I was already a headline. Socialite left with nothing. The motel room in Newark was small, stained, and smelled like bleach and regret. The bedspread had a cigarette burn. The mirror showed a woman I barely recognized, hollow eyes, clenched jaw. Someone who'd been erased. I was 38 years old. No job. No home. No family willing to answer my calls. My parents said I should have protected myself better. My sister told me. I made my bed and hung up. Richard's friends vanished overnight. Turns out loyalty evaporates when money does. I spent 2 days crying on that motel bed, replaying the courtroom over and over. Richard's lawyer calling me a manipulator, a parasite, someone who contributed nothing. The judge believed him. I walked away with nothing, not even alimony. On the 3rd day, I sat in the parking lot staring at my phone, wondering which part of my pride I'd have to kill to survive. That's when a black Mercedes pulled up beside me. The window rolled down. A woman in her 50s looked at me calmly and said the words that would split my life in two. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Hartfield?" My first instinct was to lie. When someone with a luxury car and a polished voice asks your name while you're sitting outside a rundown motel, nothing good usually follows. Reporters, lawyers, process servers, people who want to take the last scraps you didn't know you still had. "I don't have money for a lawyer," I said before she could continue. My voice sounded brittle, like it might shatter if pushed. "And I'm not signing anything." She didn't flinch. Instead, she opened the door, stepped out, and closed it gently behind her. She wore a charcoal suit tailored, within an inch of its life, and heels that probably cost more than my rent would have, being back when I had a rent. She held a leather briefcase like it was an extension of her arm. "My name is Clara Mendez," she said. "I'm an attorney, and I'm not here about your divorce." That made me pause. She studied my face the way doctors do before delivering bad news. Then she said it carefully. "I'm here about your great-uncle, Samuel Hartfield." The name felt dusty, forgotten. A relic from childhood family gatherings, where adults spoke in half-truths. Samuel was my grandfather's estranged brother. The one everyone said was bitter, difficult, someone we didn't talk about. "What about him?" I asked. Clara's expression softened. "He passed away 2 weeks ago, and he named you as his sole beneficiary." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. The sound came out sharp and broken. "That's not possible," I said. "I barely knew him. He knew you. She opened the briefcase and handed me a folder thick with documents. My name stared back at me from official-looking pages. Deeds. Account summaries. Numbers so large my brain refused to process them. The estate is valued at approximately $60 million, Clara said evenly. And it's yours. The parking lot tilted. I had to grip the edge of the bench to stay upright. This isn't real, I whispered. It is. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers. Manhattan property. Investments. Assets that could rewrite my entire existence. There is one condition, she added. Of course there was. You must live in his residence for 6 months. Alone. Can't sell or transfer any assets during that time. If you break the terms, the inheritance dissolves. I look back at the motel. Peeling paint. Flickering lights. A place where I can quietly fall apart. And if I complete it, I ask, everything becomes yours. Fully, legally, irrevocably. I swallowed. I'd lost everything once already. Pride, comfort, safety. But this felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with either salvation or annihilation, waiting below. Yes, I said finally. I accept. Clara nodded, like she'd expected that answer all along. As the Mercedes pulled away, I sat there alone, clutching the folder to my chest. For the first time since my life collapsed, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I might become. The mansion didn't feel like salvation. It felt like a challenge. The iron gates on the Upper East Side opened with a slow mechanical groan, as if the house itself was deciding whether I was worthy of entering. 4 stories of dark brick rose in front of me, tall and severe, its windows watching like unblinking eyes. This wasn't a place built for comfort. It was built for power. Clara handed me the keys and didn't open. I'll check in weekly, she said. Call me if anything feels off. Everything already did. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and old decisions. White sheets covered the furniture like shrines. The marble floors echoed under my steps, reminding me how alone I was. My suitcases looked ridiculous in the vast foyer, like a joke someone else was in. I spent the first night sitting on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, listening to the house breathe. Pipes groaned, wood creaked. Every sound made my spine tighten. I slept with the lights on. The next few days passed in silence so thick it felt alive. I wandered room to room, uncovering furniture, opening curtains, letting sunlight spill into spaces that hadn't been touched in years. The kitchen was immaculate, untouched. The HE library was lined floor to ceiling, with books that smelled like leather and patience. I found a study on the 3rd floor. A massive desk sat by the window, and on it, centered like it had been waiting, was an envelope with my name written in elegant ink. I didn't open it right away. Some part of me was afraid that if I did, this would all collapse, like waking from a dream. But I did open it. Sophia, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're here. The letter was firm but warm, like a hand on my shoulder. I've watched you longer than you realize. I saw how you were diminished, how you were taught to shrink. I saw your marriage break you quietly while the world applauded your silence. This inheritance is not charity. It is a test. They will come. The people who ignored you, the ones who dismissed you, they will want what I left you. They will tell you that you don't deserve it. Don't believe them. If you survive this house and them, you'll never doubt yourself again. Samuel, my chest burned. I folded the letter and pressed it to my heart, not sure whether to cry or laugh. Instead, I stood and stared out the window at the city below. On the 8th day, the doorbell rang. I hadn't spoken to another human in over a week. Through the camera, I saw my sister Diane. Perfect coat, perfect hair, The same sister who wouldn't take my calls when I was sleeping in a motel. I opened the door. Sophia, she breathed, arms already reaching for me. Oh my God, her hug felt wrong. Too tight. Too rehearsed. I heard about Uncle Samuel, she said, pulling back just enough to study my face. I couldn't stay away. I looked at her, then at the mansion behind me. The test had begun. Diane didn't come alone for long. Once she knew where I was, it was like blood in the water. She walked through the mansion slowly, fingertips brushing marble like she was already imagining ownership. Her eyes kept flicking, counting rooms, value, exits. She asked innocent questions that weren't innocent at all. So, what are you going to do with all this? You can't live here alone forever, right? 6 months is a long time, Soph. When I told her about the condition living alone, her concern sharpened into irritation. That's ridiculous, she said. You need family right now. Family. The word tasted bitter. 2 days after she left, my father showed up. Gerald Hartfield didn't hug. He surveyed. He stepped into the foyer like a man inspecting a potential acquisition. His eyes lingered on the chandelier, the paintings, the staircase. Samuel always was dramatic, he said. Leaving this to you was a provocation. No, I said quietly. He warned me about lawsuits, about challenges, about how fragile women like me didn't survive fights like this without protection. His protection. When I refused, his mouth hardened into a line. I remembered from childhood disapproval disguised as disappointment. You're making a mistake, he said before leaving. And when this collapses, don't come begging. Then came Marcus. He didn't knock. He rang the bell over and over until I opened the door. He was drunk, angry, and breathing entitlement. This should have been mine, he slurred, shoving past me. Old money stays with men who understand it. He grabbed a vase and smashed it against the wall. Marble echoed. My pulse roared in my ears. Get out, I said. He laughed and stepped closer. You don't have the spine. That's when I saw the drawer by the door. Slightly open. Inside was a handgun, heavy, real. I grabbed it. The weight surprised me. So did how steady my hands felt. Marcus froze. Leave, I said, voice low. Not shaking. Now, he stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he backed away, laughing too loudly, pretending he hadn't been afraid. I locked the door and slid down against it, heart hammering, the gun cold in my palm. The next morning, Clara arrived. She listened, calm, focused. Samuel anticipated this, she said. The 6 months weren't about the house. They were about pressure. She slid a folder across the table. Restraining orders, security plans, legal contingencies. And there's something else, she added. If you give in, if you share, sell, or leave early, the entire estate goes to charity. I swallowed. They'll never stop. No, Clara said. They'll escalate. That night, I found another envelope in Samuel's study. They will test your boundaries. They always do. This house will teach you what you're made of if you let it. I locked every door, closed every curtain, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a line had been drawn, and they were all standing on the wrong side of it. Transcript after transcript appeared on the screen behind me. My father's voice filled the room, first cold, calculated, threatening. Samuel with legal pressure if he didn't remember family. Gasps rippled through the audience. Then Marcus slurring, begging for money to cover debts, promising silence in return. Finally Diane, sobbing dramatically, swearing she'd stand by Samuel as long as the checks kept coming. The room went dead quiet. These recordings, I said, steady and clear, were made with consent and notarized. Samuel Hartfield knew exactly who was circling him. He also knew who wasn't. A reporter stood, Why leave everything to you? I swallowed once, because I was the only one who never asked him for anything. The story flipped overnight. Headlines changed tone. Words like predator vanished, replaced with mastermind. Manipulator, but this time, not me. My father's firm lost clients within days. Marcus was arrested 2 weeks later when his creditors came forward. Diane disappeared from society pages completely. The lawsuit never made it to court. There was no case left. 6 months passed slowly after that. The house grew quieter, calmer, like it was finally breathing. I learned every creak in the floors, every window's mood at sunset. I hosted no one. I owed no one. On the final day of the condition, Clara arrived with one last document. "You did it," she said, smiling. "The estate is irrevocably yours." I signed without ceremony. That evening, I walked through the mansion one last time, not as a test, not as a cage, but as a choice. In Samuel's study, I found his final note tucked into a book I hadn't opened before. "You were never weak, Sophia. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to be." I didn't cry. I left the mansion a month later, sold it, exactly as I wanted, donating a portion to causes Samuel cared about. I bought a smaller place near the sea. Quiet, honest. Sometimes I see my family's names mentioned in passing footnotes of scandals, echoes of their own greed. They lost everything chasing what they thought I couldn't protect. They were wrong. I didn't inherit power. I claimed it, and I never needed their permission to do it.